I was having a conversation this morning with Rick Wartzman of the Drucker Institute, and I was asking him, is Henry, is he an optimist or what? And Rick said, and I quote, Henry basically thinks management sucks, and it always has sucked.
Say that again. Henry thinks
sorry, the acoustics are bad, and
I got the Henry thinks
management sucks.
Okay,
and that he's always thought management sucks. So, but let me ask you. So you've been sitting through these panels for a couple of days. What was missing? What did we not talk about that was important?
Yeah, let me also say something about that. I don't think management sucks at all. I think the current popular view of managing that's been promoted very heavily by shareholder value, bottom line, some of the things that Lynn was talking about, sucks. I think chief executives who practice management by deeming, which means they sort of pronounce performance figures that people should meet, and then if they don't meet them, they kind of kick them out. My granddaughter, who's 10 years old, could do that. I don't mean meet the targets, I mean set the targets. And so that's the kind of management that sucks. There's a lot of wonderful management. But what's missing in the conference? The conference has been wonderful, and the beauty of it, I think, has been its eclectic nature. And I think Peter Drucker would have loved that aspect. We just went from one thing to another. We hit almost every side of this issue, and it was quite beautiful. There were some sessions, like the first one this morning, that I think were fabulous. There were others I think were a little less fabulous, but overall very interesting. But Central Station in this city is inundated with refugees right now. The world is facing a huge problem with global warming. I'm all in favor of inclusive capitalism because I think we have to fix capitalism, but I don't think fixing capitalism will fix our problem. I think our problem is much bigger than that. One huge step is to fix capitalism. I think we're living in a world that's completely out of balance. I think it's out of balance because of the relationship between the sectors, the public sector, the private sector, and what I call the plural sector. And the plural sector meaning civil society, NGOs, everything that's not business or government. And a comment this morning about government is inept. And that's like a mantra, particularly in the United States. But why is government inept? And can we do without government? And should we just dismiss government as inept and let business take over, which is exactly what's been happening now. I mean, I could go on, it's all in the book, but when we said in 1989 that capitalism had triumphed when the Berlin Wall fell, balance triumphed. We had balance between the sectors before then, particularly in the United States, with tremendous welfare programs and high tax rates and so on. And we've been losing that balance ever since. And I think technology is a factor. I think individualism is a big factor because, we're citizens, we're members of community, and we're individuals. And that has to get balanced too. And that's public-private plural sector balance. And we're losing that. We've lost that, and the world is suffering. And as I said yesterday, I think technology drives a lot of that individualism because, all these technologies isolate us further and further from community activities.
Mm-hmm. So those are big problems. In terms of what we were talking about here, what we've been talking about for a couple of days, we're all sort of on a spectrum, I guess, and there are those of some of us who think technology is the answer. We can't even see it, but it will solve problems, somewhat magically perhaps, but as often can happen. Others who think, no, it's really chipping away at our humanity, the whole sort of premise of this meeting. Yeah. I guess if you assume the latter, and I think you do, and you talked about some of the problems that technology poses, what do we do about it? I mean, we're trying to be practical in this event. So I guess, from your session, maybe even redoubling some of the points you made or other things you heard. So what do we do about it? If there are aspects of technology that are making, the life that we're talking about, the work life, business life, office life, worse, what do we do about it? What are some takeaways?
Well, I think a lot of it has to do with community relationships that the whole thesis of bowling alone, that, if you read the Tocqueville from 1830 about the United States, he talked about plural sector associations, community associations, as being critical to American life, but also critical to American democracy. We've seen a huge diminution of American democracy because of this opening of the doors to private funding of elections, private donations in elections, and so on. And that was key. The community sector was key to American democracy, and that's what we've got to renew. That's why I was emphasizing it. You know, I'm not. I wrote this kind of down a little bit. What you just said, Eddie, about the glories of technology and the dangers of technology. And I'm not a fan of the zealots or the Luddites. And I think there were a number of people here who didn't take either of those positions, but talked about some balanced. You know, and that's what we've got to do. We've got to balance our use of technology, but we've got to recognize, and many people said this over these 2 days, we've got to balance our human nature. You know, we've got to balance that, and we're losing that in all. I mean, if Volkswagen can pull off, and this is hardly more than the tip of the iceberg, it's the worst of it. But if Volkswagen can pull off a stunt like that, then what the heck is going on with the world? And when are we going to wake up? We had the G7 making an announcement that we will be getting rid of fossil fuels by 2100. How did any reporter report that with a straight face? In 85 years, we're going to get rid of fossil fuels? Are we kidding? And even the CBC, which is a government fairly liberal network, reported this as if it was serious. I mean, every country is going to go through 20 administrations, every one of which could cancel anything. They were making promises about tomorrow, but nothing for today. Please judge Paris not by anything they promise tomorrow, but what they're going to do today. Because, and this is what's going on in the world.
So in that spirit, you know, we're all here because we care about this issue. We care about issues. You know, we all want to make positive change happen. I would guess that we're all frustrated. You know, we go to places like Davos and people get together and nothing changes. You know, so how does change happen? So you have a crowd of people who are probably feeling fairly charged up after a couple of days, willing to be activists. You know, is it a matter of people individually connecting, you know, on these topics, connecting more, putting their cell phones away sometimes, or is meaningful change at a higher level? Is it about policy and, you know, the 20% threshold that demands change that can make it happen? What's your feeling? How does positive change happen? Do we know?
Well, it happens everywhere with everyone, and you never know who's going to do it. Gandhi happened to lead it in India, and I guess it hit the 20% mark with the salt marches or something, and sent it over the edge. In 1776, something happened in the United States. I'm going to say this country, in the United States, that put it over the edge, and people said enough. We've had enough of British colonialism. So something puts it over the edge, but. So I was speaking to somebody in the administration of the city. I did a session with some people here on Wednesday morning, and he was he had read my book and he was talking about the plural sector and so on. And because of his responsibilities, he went down to Central Station, and he was stunned by the spontaneous outpouring from the plural sector. All the plural sector means you and me acting outside of our business or public interests, not as citizens who vote, not as people who work in a company, but simply as members of society and members of community. A picture of Sikhs with something that said kind of Sikhs for, you know, Viennese Sikhs for help or something. I forget the exact words, but there's that spontaneous outpouring, and I see it from young people who are starved for some way to turn around what's going on now, and partly to correct what's going on in business, but partly also to recognize that the influence of business on other aspects of society is massive and rather destructive in many ways. The trade tribunals that no country should ever have accepted in all these pacts, and the fact that they got away with these trade tribunals is just abhorrent, and too much of this is going on.
Yeah. So on a happier
That
note,
doesn't answer your question.
no, I mean, so give us something that you see in the world that makes you feel a little bit more optimistic.
The energy of young people to do things. The fact that some people in Norway, in the Netherlands, took their government to court and got their courts to rule against the government with regard to what it wasn't doing for global warming. It's another way around, with the plural sector people acting through the courts. The United States had the famous Citizens United case where the Supreme Court threw the door wide open, the most horrible decision for democracy ever, threw the door wide open. Meanwhile, in Brazil, watch Brazil. I don't care about the corruption in Brazil right now. That corruption is criminal and can be prosecuted. The corruption in the United States is legal. The corruption in the United States is legal. Look at the Citizens United thing, which enables enormous amounts of money to come in. Compare that with what the Supreme Court in Brazil just did, which is to strike down political donations. The court, not the government. So I think, by the way, once Brazil, and I think Brazil will resolve its corruption problems, watch Brazil.
Yeah.
Brazil is like America 150 years ago. Full of energy, full of ideas, amazing civil society. That's where things are going to happen.
Yeah. Okay, Henry Mintzberg, thank you.
Okay.